I would say to you, that's been hopefully my legacy, is to empower young people with efficacy and to have the ability to elevate their voice, to say, yes, you can lead.
You're listening to the CFL podcast, where possibility is at work. Here, we explore what it means to empower learners, connect communities, create impact, and help Nevada thrive. Each episode shares stories and ideas from the people reimagining what learning can look like in our community and beyond. Because when we learn, build, and dream together, anything is possible. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CFL podcast. My name is Andy Lott, and I am the Managing Director of the Ian Hub at the Center for the Future of Learning. The Ian Hub is a space where young people can come and explore their passion and purpose and meet it with possibility. It is where learning becomes a journey of connection, of belonging, of growth, and of impact. If you are interested in learning anything about the Ian Hub or all of the great work that CFL does, you can log on to our website, nvcfl.org, to learn more. Today on the podcast, I am so excited to welcome a guest who I have known for a very long time, but who for decades has been a champion for young people, educators, and our learning community here in Southern Nevada. And so I'm just going to cut right to it and welcome to the podcast my 8th grade English teacher, Miss Ramona Esparza-Stoffregan.
Well, Andy, first of all, I'm going to have to say I feel like a mama bear because I remember your 8th grade self. And I am so proud of you because of the work that you're doing here in the future of learning, because it's needed right now in these times. And, I always wonder what was your experience when I was your teacher. Mm. And I really think about those times as a leader, as an educator. What impacts, or influence did I have on you? And what I can say is I'll take some claim. You are doing amazing work, sir. So thank you for your service and what you're doing.
Well, thank you, because not only were you my 8th grade English teacher, you have moved on in your career to so many different things. So, currently you wear a lot of different hats when it comes to learning in our community. Why did you get into education? And then what was the journey like up until my 8th grade at Becker Middle School in the Clark County School District, but really the journey beyond that into the leadership roles that you kind of hold today?
This is such a loaded question for me that I always want to credit my upbringing a little bit, and I'll go into like a personal story. And I grew up with some very servant leaders in the community, my mother and my father. And they were individuals that really believed in reaching back into community and serving in different capacities. But my personal why, I never thought that I would be in education. Mm. I was like the typical homegrown going into potentially a hotel and tourism. Mm. I was like, I want to be a manager. I want to travel the world and do big things. But my experience on 28th Street, I did a tutoring summer, like a little internship. I was getting paid to pay for school. And I'm going to tell you, I fell in love with teaching and teaching those young people in that particular area. And it wasn't just the teaching, it was the whole child that we were able to reach. And going into meeting their families and visiting them at home. So it was a very push in. Instead of them coming to us, we went to like a community center, and I was doing some tutoring, and I got the bug, and I haven't stopped since.
That's incredible. And I think that, when I think about my own journey, I think there's always those like little sparks where you get that interaction with a young person and you're like, this is the thing that is going to influence the rest of my career. And I can probably point back to several of those times that happened to me. You've seen CCSD throughout the decades, really. Yes. I mean, because, my middle school, even though it seems like it was last year, it was not. What positive changes have you seen in your tenure, in your time here at within the Clark County School District?
So I want to really lift up the district because I actually grew up in the district. I'm a product of Clark County School, the system itself. I'm proud of that. And, a very much alumni of UNLV. But I would say the things that I've noticed over time from having been a student to a teacher to an administrator in all facets, like central office, site-based, and moving into my new role as a trustee on the board, which is a different lens. I'm really proud of the diverse in our offering for programming. And I'm speaking specifically to our magnet systems because the way that they're helping kids understand the meaningfulness of work and the authenticity of learning, they're really finding true purpose. Like we have certain programming that maybe you can become a pilot. You can actually get your 2-year associate degree with dual credits, right? You can go become a nurse and get credentialed. So I think when I was a student, there wasn't as many programming offerings, but now for our students, there is just a plethora of magnet offerings. And I think that really opens up the door for their learning and keeps them engaged.
So, I think a lot of times when we think about all of the great things that are happening in CCSD, it's like Yelp reviews. When people leave Yelp reviews, it's because they're frustrated, right?
Yes.
So what opportunities do you see as potential for the district to grow now? I think one, under new leadership with Superintendent Ebert in her position, but what are those pathways or those signals of change that we might start to see as potential possibility in the district?
So I wanna say that I will have to go back to my upbringing, where my example was looking at leaders of change. And sometimes you have to open a system up and really do discovery. And I think we're in that opportunity of time of discovery to see what's possible, what can be different. And I'm looking forward to our new Superintendent Ebert's leadership because she is that individual that is innovative and creative. I think we missed an opportunity with education and really not reforming it or redesigning it. So I look forward to us really giving our kids a choice. Like they need purpose, they need meaning, they need authentic learning. And there are many, many amazing, great things that are happening in our schools, but really are our schools meeting all the needs of all students? That's the questions we have to ask.
Yeah, and I think that really brings it to like your role as a trustee, right? Sitting on the school board, this not new anymore, I guess. You've been on the board for a little bit now, but this newest hat that you're wearing, when we think about the role that the community can play in relation to the schools, right? So I think that, yes, the school district as a system is its own thing, but why is it important to really build those strong relationships between school and community?
So I love this question. You do not separate a community from the school. The school is the community and I think that's the difference now, that the role that I play as a trustee is really listening to different communities, right? There is not a one size fits all. And really listening to the needs of a community can be very different and diverse, and it can be within a 2-mile radius, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yes.
just
It
like
be across the street. It's
it
totally
can be
different.
across the street. Exactly, Andy. So I would say to you that we really need to understand our communities better. We need to listen, and again, I want to elevate student voice. I think that's been even as a former principal. We were given the charge to do school organizational teams. And there were different representation on our teams, like the parent reps, you had teacher reps, you had support staff, you had community reps. The one rep that was also there was a student rep. And I will say to you, because I led in a high school of almost 3,000 students, when my first iteration of school organizational teams, my students said, hey, I think I want to be the chair. And there was like no precedence for that, right?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I think that's you really want to do this. It's a lot of work. Do you want to be the lead? Do you want to lead adults in a space? And she did. I wish I could say her name, but I can't.
That's okay.
But
what was the response of the adults in the room? Because oftentimes I think when we start to think about the shift of those power structures, it can get a little sticky and weird and people feel uncomfortable.
So when people are uncomfortable with change, it's not so much that they're worried about what's going to be added. It's worrying about what's going to be lost. And so I think there were some questions by the adults, oh, is this permissible? What do the regulations say? What do I knew that we were going to get a little bit of, and it wasn't anything negative. It was just like the wondering, right? Yeah. Like, why does she want to do and, lead the meetings and set the agenda? And, I would say to you, that's been hopefully my legacy, is to empower young people with efficacy and to have the ability to elevate their voice, to say, yes, you can lead. And so it took a minute, but guess what? It set a precedent, and other schools followed. And I do believe a lot of schools now have chairs that are led by students.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that young people are so magical and can bring so much to the table when we give them the opportunity to step into those kinds of roles and positions. And I think that that's just a really beautiful example of like a healthy partnership, right?
Yes.
Like, what does it look like when the community comes together and then they're in support of young people, right? Because all the people on that SOT were there to make the experience of young people in our school or in your schools and specifically a better experience, right? And so how cool for that, that young person to kind of, to be in that role. So, okay, another hat you wear.
Yes. So many. Okay.
A trustee, yes. Former principal, yes. Former 8th grade English teacher. You are the co-founder of a nonprofit. So I'm going to give you like, what's your elevator pitch? Like, sell me on it.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Even though I already know what it is,
you do, but maybe our listeners don't. We are basically an organization that is a state affiliate. There's a national organization called NVALAS, the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents. So we're the Nevada chapter. We're the NVALAS chapter. Really, we are here to grow a pipeline of leaders that will represent all students, specifically Latino students. When we look at our district as a whole, we have 49% of our students are Hispanic identified, and then you add in multiracial, so that's another layer, right? Yeah. So our mission is to have representation, number one, and diversifying the pipeline and growing our next leaders, because I believe our next superintendents, our next principals, our next teachers are sitting in our seats. They are the students right before us. So they do need to see leaders that look like them, that understand them, that can help them break through some of the challenges that our young people face today. Secondly, we advocate for definitely issues that are educational facing. And then we also partner in policy work as well. And we are a 501(c), but we definitely just, like I said, collaboratively co-create things in order to have educational outcomes that are best for kids.
And what does that bridge look like? How are you, what does like recruitment look like? Because I think, I don't know how many kids are like raising their hand saying, I want to be a teacher.
That's right.
So I think it's one of the most rewarding careers I think I had. Probably the hardest job I've ever had as well.
Yes, it is. It's a very hard job.
So what does that look like?
I think it's not like we're saying to students all the time, do you want to be a teacher? For us, it's, do you want to lead in your community? And what does that look like? And sometimes it may be you're passing out food for the community because it's a necessity right now. Like, that's a need. It's basic need. Maybe you're tutoring at your elementary school. And we did do partnerships like that. We had high school students going to elementary. And it's not because we said, hey, we want you to be a teacher, but we want you to help your community grow and thrive, right? Students want to thrive. And they get that bug, like I got my bug, right? Tutoring, I thought I was going to not be a teacher. But you get the bug to want to teach. And then you support that, you grow that, you coach it, you mentor. Yeah.
And I think I've heard you say on the prep call that we did for this meeting today that small actions make a difference. And what I'm hearing you say now as you tell that story, and it's just kind of so I don't know that I understood it in the way that you're articulating it now, but that like, yes, like serving your community, doing one thing to help make the world a better place is leadership, right? It is the thing that then creates this pipeline and this bridge to getting access to leaders that look like our communities. And I think that's such an important piece of, I think, the work that you're doing.
Thank you for that.
Looking at my note cards.
No worries.
How can school feel more connected to real life? Because what I'm hearing you say is, you know, these leadership moves are this connection to your community. But sometimes young people feel like they're in these boxes at school doing something that doesn't apply to the real world when they get out.
You know, I love this question because I think we as adults think we know best. And so I would say the first part of that is when everybody talks about relationships, that's important, right? That's a key to keeping people. But I want to lean into belonging. I really feel like students need to find their belonging at school, especially in a space and that belonging may not be a subject. It may be an extracurricular, maybe football, it might be chess club, it might be band. We don't know what students' passions are until we actually lean into that. And I think we need to meet that, right? If it doesn't exist, then why are we not building it? So when we look at what's happening in our classrooms, we need to be very reflective about what is it that students are finding meaningful and purposeful and passionate about. And maybe we need to think about redesigning some of those spaces and places. And it can be in the physical, like makeup of a room, of how you have flexible seating. It can be, well, why aren't kids leading, you know, and why isn't the teacher like hanging back? I mean, I know as a teacher, I really tried to lean into that. And I hope you remember those things, Andy.
Oh, I remember hands-on projects. I remember doing like building things out of cardboard in my garage, even though it was English class. We were also then like, what are these representations that look like outside of just the text itself, right? So it's about learning, it's about understanding and processing and being literate, but it's also how are you understanding and processing those things in a deeper way so that it helps you see the world in a different way.
And I want to lean into that because I will share with you that I've always been kind of an unconventional learner and leader. And what do I mean by that? So when I went to the university, it was probably my first master's that I was earning. And there was like...
Did you hear that? First master's?
Yeah.
That means she's got more than one.
And so I went to my advisor and I looked at the coursework and I said, you know, all of this that you're offering me is not filling my need. And he was shocked by that. He was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is what we have. You need to pick something. I go, no, there's got to be something else. And it's the courage to ask and to take a risk. And I said, what else is there to offer? Do you know that he said you could do an independent study? I was like, what are you saying? And that's what I did, Andy, is I made my own project to study. And it was relevant to the work that I was doing in my day-to-day. And that class, I'm telling you, for that particular degree was probably my best output and outcome because I was passionate. It was meaningful. I actually could go back and apply it. I still have a lot of that work that I did at that time. And I'll never forget my advisor. And he was like, wow, you really surprised me. What's possible, right?
Yeah. No, it's true. And I think that when we connect young people to the things that they are passionate about, I think it makes a difference.
Yes.
And I think that's what the portrait of a Nevada learner is so good at doing, is just helping us say that schools, relationships, experiences, the environments can all be a little bit different to meet the needs of young people, but also meet the needs of our workforce, right?
Yes.
Because I think we're seeing that young people aren't prepared to go out and go to school, go to trade school, get a job, whatever their path may be once they leave the district. I think that we're seeing the data showing that they're not prepared.
I think what's interesting too is a lot of our youth, they're working.
Yeah.
They are working already. And so I think what can we do to help them and really read. I really mean what I say. Like, I know this is like a bold statement, but really being able for the adults to change, right? And that means in all ways. We have to look at our assessments, what we measure for metrics. How do we help kids to be ready for work? How are we having that conversation with our business and our community so that we're meeting their needs? There's a lot of opportunities. So I see it as opportunities for us to be able to do better.
When you think about the business sector, right, the industry, what's a way that if you were to look forward into the future, what's a way that you would imagine they could be engaged in the school system, in the growth of our young people, because they are the future CEOs and employees of all of these, companies that we have here.
So I keep saying about breaking up a system, right? Because systemically, when you lean into a mindset or belief, it's because you have a pattern of behavior. So to open a system, you have to be willing to do things differently. And maybe that could look at restructuring the type of time that kids spend in school. So maybe there's a 60-40 model, right? Like, so maybe they spend 60% of their time in a physical space of building, of learning, and maybe 40% is like an internship. But maybe they're also getting paid. Maybe they're also getting credentialed. Maybe they're getting credits. So I think that's the piece where let's be very innovative and creative with our partners. And let's think about shifting how we keep our kids, because I bet you if kids said, hey, I can go to work and get paid and I can learn and get my degree, wow, I think I'm going to sign up for that and I'm going to stay engaged, right? I don't know. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, no, I think as I think about, I often say trust, time, and power. And the first thing you have to do is you have to build those relationships with young people, right? And this is when you're co-creating with young people. I like to say this. The second thing I think is, one, it takes time to build that trust. And two, you kind of have to rethink how I bumped the mic. You have to rethink how you're utilizing time. Yeah. And so I think that just echoing what you're saying, that idea that, especially when we get into the upper grades, right?
Yes.
That young people's time is valuable because they could be at 14 years old. You can hire a young person to work in the state of Nevada. So
that's right.
They can be out there getting jobs and getting paid. And so is there a better way that we can align that? And then the last thing, power, is really allowing young people to have the agency and listening to their voice. What are they passionate about? What do you want to learn about? I know that it probably for some kids isn't trigonometry, but for some, they're like, I want to do this really cool thing in science or math. And so a upper level math class would make sense for them to be in. And so I think those three things are really important: time, trust, power, and the shifting of all of those to help us really center young people in our work.
And can I just add to I love your list.
Add away.
A list. I think what I really appreciate is the fact that we also have to earn the trust of our families, right?
Absolutely. Because
they're the ones that, you get used to something that's traditional, that's normalized, and then you're saying, okay, now we want you to do this other thing, and you have to trust us to say, we're going to be in charge of this learning process, but they can also learn these other things and come out with something greater. I just feel like if we would, it's not that the students, they want it, right? I think they're telling us that loud and clear. We have kids that can graduate early. We have kids that maybe are doing homeschooling. I'm just going to say the word. Yeah. They are. Or they're going to other options.
Dual enrollment and getting those college credits now so that they can be further along when they get out.
Exactly.
I mean, when I talk to young people, they're like, this is great. I'm graduating high school with an associate's degree. Or, I was in conversation with some young people from CSN High School, and they're like, I will graduate high school and have my associate's degree. Like, how amazing is that, right? And what does that next step for them look like in terms of a career, in terms of opportunity? And so how do we expand that, I think, for all young people?
And I think it's to your point of time, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the time is is not a factor that we need to be bound to anymore.
And I think if you look at the Carnegie, in the Carnegie unit, they are the people that created it are actually saying maybe we should rethink this. That this isn't, sitting a kid down for 180 days is not necessarily the right move. And how can we reimagine that, reinvent that, so that it serves the world that we live in, especially AI and all these things that, didn't exist when I was in 8th grade.
And where was that? Because it would have cut all of that work that we did and time that we lost. Just saying, because I love it. I love AI.
Yeah. I think that it's the kind of thing that young people, it is going to be a part. The kids that are born today, AI will be a part of their life forever. I remember when Facebook came out and I first got my Facebook account, and I remember, as these YouTube came out, I remember these things not being a part of my life, and I remember them now in my life. But for some young people, they'll never know a world without AI. And how are we providing opportunity to the young people that aren't traditionally going to have access to it, the opportunity to explore and create and utilize it in ways that are meaningful? And I think there's some responsibility that comes along with that, and helping them understand that responsibility is so important. Okay, not to go on an AI tangent, but
no, but I love the discussion.
Yeah,
it's important. Okay.
So let's do a little role play. I am 8th grade Andy, who was I was a fine student. If I was in math class, I probably wasn't a great student. I was probably okay in English, but I was very curious, and I always wanted to ask questions. And so if I was an 8th grade student that raised my hand and said, "Miss Esparza, you're saying future-ready learning.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?" What would you respond to 8th grade Andy as my 8th grade teacher, but with all of the wisdom that you now have in all of the other journeys you've taken beyond there?
It is such a wealth of a question. And I think it goes back to, you talked about the portrait of a learner. I mean, there's a reason that students are saying we want to thrive, we want to have compassion, we want to have meaning and purpose. And I think how do we capture all of that into what would be their learning of the future, in addition to what tools are out there, like the AI and the parameters with guidelines and guardrails. So I think it's really about co-creating with the student. It's almost like, you're creating your own plan for learning, right? I went to my advisor and said, "Listen, this is not meeting my needs. I want something different." Like, why are we not giving that experience to kids too? And I know that's it's very different, right? My thinking's very different, but I think the difference can you imagine the learning and the outputs that kids would do?
Yeah, and your needs were met, but you were supported through it. So it wasn't like you were just handed something and said, "Go do this thing on your own." It was that you had a mentor or a guide or a coach that's supporting you through your own learning journey. And I think that becomes so powerful when young people can then, really get through the struggles of those things, because that's more than memorizing multiplication tables and being able to do them very fast. That is like actual skills that will apply into so many facets of that young person's life beyond school.
And I think, Andy, to speak to your young self, I remember you very much as a student, and you were so creative. And I taught English, 8th grade, yes, and other grade levels. But 8th grade was such a magical time for me because I did a lot of project-based learning, and I hope you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
And it was interesting because it would really, it was never about the grade, right? It was about the process. And I think that's the future of learning, is it's about the process, because we don't know. You may start at point A, but you're going to go to point E, D, whatever, and it may look different, right? And it should, because we're not a one-size-fit-all. And I think we need to start realizing, how do we break that mold for education and do things like very unique, just like Andy Lott is unique. Right?
I remember that. I was a big theater nerd, and I had to. I
wouldn't say you were very talented. You were a talented theater.
Well, I
person.
Was in 8th grade. We had to. I just remember picking a song lyric from Rent the musical, and we had to build like a representation of the text.
Yes.
And it was about understanding and of some kind of poetic piece that you understood deeply or whatever. And the line, I don't know the quote, but something about what binds the fabric together when the raging, shifting winds of change keep ripping away, or something. And I decided to make a pillow. I don't know why. I probably made my mom buy a sewing machine for this. I don't actually know, but I remember making a pillow and I sewed the whole pillow together, and I put the quote, like painted the quote on the front of the pillow, but then at one corner I left it open because it was about how,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
these seeds of change, like you can't always keep things perfect, right? That
Yeah.
things are always going to be changing. And so if there's like theater nerds out there that are going to come for me in the comments, please don't. But I did my best. But yeah, I just remember that it, you know, to capture what I actually was understanding and processing and thinking was so important to me as a 13-year-old.
I mean, to the point that you still remember all of that.
Yeah.
Andy. I mean, maybe your pillow's somewhere in a box.
Oh, it's in a landfill, unfortunately, I think. I think it's, knowing my mother, it's probably in a landfill. So,
But look at how you remembered that impact and that quote and how it was so, like, you were passion. That was passion right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Passion. So,
and I haven't forgotten it, you know, and I think that's like, when we talk about like lifelong learning, like that's like the kind of stuff that you carry with you for your whole life. So I think that there's, you know, community, you talked about like parent engagement, right?
yes,
And we think about, it's not just the learner, it's also
Right.
the community.
that's right.
What is like a strong partnership between young people, between families, between community partners and organizations, between industry? What do those strong relationships like look like and feel like when we think about our community here in Southern Nevada?
Well, you know, I think it goes back to really understanding how communities are very unique and different. Like you just said it, like one space across the street can be different from the other, and that literally is true. I think it goes back to even the comments you made about trust, right? I think it's, you know, really earning the trust of our families and having them. It's not like we are there to teach them. We are there to reach them. And so maybe we need to go where they are. And what do I mean by that? Like maybe you need to go to spaces that are not the school. You need to go to the grocery stores. You need to go to faith-based places. They're in Broadacre or Swapmeet. I mean, I'm telling you that seeing us and being visible and earning trust and also delivering on if families are saying, this is a concern or I have a frustration. I think that's the piece where now as a trustee, I am there to listen, but I'm also there to follow through and also address what is happening. So, I mean, that's kind of a granular explanation for like the larger system, but I think it goes back to relationships, building trust, and making sure that we are, you know, meeting the needs of whatever is happening in the real time.
When you think about, you know, what's coming up for me is that the work you do with NVALAS, like I think that when the leaders in the community look like the community and have lived experiences that come from the community, I think it makes such a difference. How do you feel like that work has started to shift the landscape here in our community?
Well, I think what is really important is people sometimes will say, because we look at the data, right? And it doesn't necessarily reflect what population we may have. And I'm not saying it's just one specific thing, but it's for all things. But what we have to say is the talent is here. And you have to look at decisions that are made. And I will, if you will let me share a little bit of research.
Share the research
the
away.
research
Yes.
away. Here we go.
Pop it up on the screen. Make it. Okay,
I love to read. I mean, of course, I was an English teacher, so I'm constantly reading current educational research. And the Wallace Foundation a few years ago did a study, and they said one of the first primary impactful difference for a child to achieve academically and in other ways, they said is actually the teacher. The second most influential. Can you guess, Andy, what it is? It's interesting.
No.
It's the principal.
Really?
It's the leader in the building. Because when you think about it, the principal sets the temperature and the tone and the culture and the climate, right? So they establish the norms, the expectations, the way that business is done in a building.
It's so funny that you say that, though, because I can think of Lummis Elementary, Rick Watson. I can think of Becker Middle School, Kathy Andrews. I can
Yes.
think of the Las Vegas Academy, Bob Geary. Like I can like name all of those principals and all of my teachers and the people that were kind of in the other roles I could kind of maybe remember. But yeah, no, that's so interesting that you say that.
And I think that's why it's so important that the leaders that are in those seats do understand the community as a whole and the needs that are met. And I will say I was one of the very few Latina high school principals in the day, which was very rare. And I was in the day of like when we have like 47 now, but I think I was in the day of like maybe 43 or something. Okay, high schools. And it was interesting because I led differently. And it's just a fact. It was just the way it was. And I'll say an example. There were concerns about kids not coming to school because they did not have immunization. And I mean, I'm talking hundreds. And I said, well, guess what? I need to build a wellness clinic. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, that's not your job. Test scores, right? Math, English, science, writing, all that, okay? Arithmetic. And I said, but if you want me to have students learning, we need to take care of these other needs first. So it took me almost a year and a half. Thankfully, I had the data, and we had partnerships with nonprofits, which I will not name, but they were providing mental health services. We had an agreement with the MOU, and we also provided medical referrals and such for the students and eventually for their siblings. It was permissible. And I'm going to tell you, Andy, I got my lack of immunizations and my lack of attendance down to single digits.
Well, it just goes to show that school is so much more than just the reading, writing, arithmetic,
That's right?
Like it is, it goes beyond that, and it really is thinking about the whole child and the whole young person that's in the space there, and how when they come together, how are they in community, and how are they building relationships, and how are they making an impact not only inside of the school building but the streets that echo beyond. And I think that it's just I think a testament to your leadership, to your work, that you were able to like do those things for your community, because you got to be healthy to come to school, right?
That's right.
You got to, and not, that's not just physical health, it's mental health, it's mental well-being,
Right.
It's all of those things. And I think that that's just what a cool story to hear and to know. On the NVALAS side, like, is there anything else you want to like share to the people that are hearing or watching this right now about the work that you all are doing? How they maybe could learn more or get support from your organization?
So thank you for allowing me to have a little pitch. So, even though we are about representation, we are inclusive. I have individuals that just want to grow and learn, and we provide professional learning. We do virtual institutes. We do in-person learning. But we also do an advocacy piece and policy piece. And what I mean by that is sometimes our elected officials are starting to now co-create, collaborate, and say, hey, we really want to create a policy or, consider a law to address certain specific student needs. And some of that has been done through a certain assembly person, which I won't name, but it's on record. There was a bill that was passed, AB 335.
You can name them if you want.
Oh, we're allowed to?
Yeah,
okay,
I mean, I don't know.
I'm going to do a shout out
us?
because
Shout out.
she is incredible as a leader in our community and a former student, Assemblywoman Selena Torres Fawcett. She actually came to us way back in 2019, and we did one iteration of the law. Then sometimes as laws are implemented, you've got intended and unintended consequences or things that you're like, oh, there's some gaps here when it's implemented. So then the revision came back, and just this past session, we went up and did some advocacy, and she very much fought for in a bipartisan way, which was very important to get that bill passed. And the governor approved, and we're starting to see some really good implementation at the school level, with really identifying and addressing needs of multilingual learners. So we're proud of that work, and we're proud to be partners in anything that will make a student's experience better in school.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, she is a great advocate for education in our community, and maybe one day she'll join us on the podcast. Did you
I
hear
think
that?
that's a great idea. Absolutely.
If you had to think about a younger Ramona,
Oof.
what is a piece of advice that you would give her, knowing the journey that you've been on?
So, wow, there would be so much to tell my younger self, but I think because in the spirit of time, I will narrow it to one or two. And my one or two things, if I could tell my younger self, is have courage to ask the hard questions, and don't be afraid to not please others. And I think the last piece is just be unapologetically leading for the betterment of all. And I mean, not just youth, but anybody, right? So I wish I could tell my younger self, like, you need to think about those things because you need to be that leader.
Yeah, but I think it's the bumps in the road that I think the resilience that we gain through that help us actually to become the leaders that we are. So maybe it's had you had that advice, you might not have taken the route you took and been able to accomplish the things. So, but it's great advice to those listening. I think that, it's powerful. I think like a leadership journey, and then just seeing, for context, there was like a gap in us knowing each other because I went on from eighth grade to live my life and didn't think much about eighth grade in, the years after, only because middle school is such a weird time for, I think, a lot of young people. But as we've reconnected over the years, it's just really incredible to see that arc and that journey of your career. That's going to kind of take us to the end of our conversation today. So imagining, when you imagine the future of learning in the Clark County School District and really beyond in the world, maybe the universe even, when you imagine the future of learning in the Clark County School District, what are some possibilities that give you hope?
I'm going to go back to our students. I think they have the answers. We just need to listen. And I think we need to really look at our current systems yielding really the best experience for learning. And I think we have such an opportunity to really discover where we can look at things that can be changed. I know that sounds very like abstract and big and like lofty, but I look forward to really opening up some systems that we have and really looking at how can we redesign all the things that we mentioned earlier: time, belonging, relationships, workforce. And I think there's going to be, we're in a big time of change. And I actually never saw myself being in this role as a trustee because I left as I said, okay, that chapter's closed in my life and I'm going to do other things and focus on nonprofit work. But I am glad that I'm back because I'm excited about what is coming and what's next. And I don't know that I even know what's next, but I'm looking forward to what will be.
Yeah, I think that's so lovely because I think, we often talk about reading and writing and math, and I think those are all foundational and fundamental for people. But you can be learning to read and write and do math and be bored.
That's right.
Or you can learn to read and write and do math and be engaged and fulfilled and find purpose. And I think that's really what I hear you saying is that,
Yes.
that young people deserve to enjoy waking up in the morning and going to school, even if it is at 7 a.m. or 7:30 or whatever tough decisions you all have to make as a board on start times. So I do think that, where's the joy in learning and how do we help young people find that?
That is a great way to sum it up. Thank you so much.
Miss Esparza, as I like to refer to you because that's who you'll always be to me. Thank you for joining us today. It's just an honor to know you and to see all of the amazing work that you have done for our community. You're such a champion for young people, families, school, and learning and leadership. Because I think at the heart of this, it's really growing leaders in our community that you are so good at. And I think that that's probably why I'm in this seat today, is because I had an interaction with you as a young person. So thank you for being here. And thank you all for joining us today on the CFL podcast. Again, if you want to find out more about the Center for the Future of Learning, log on to our website, nvcfl.org. And if you're listening to this around the holidays, I hope you're having a happy and healthy holiday season. And if you are in the future listening to this in the year 2026, which feels so far away, Happy New Year. Thank you all for being here, and catch the next episode coming out soon. Okay, bye. You're listening to the CFL podcast, where possibility is at work. Here, we explore what it means to empower learners, connect communities, create impact, and help Nevada thrive. Each episode shares stories and ideas from the people reimagining what learning can look like in our community and beyond. Because when we learn, build, and dream together, anything is possible.